You said the book is about recovery and how we deal with grief. In an interview, you once said that you write toward what you want to know. What did you want to know in writing this book, and are you closer to knowing it?
It's a really good question. It's actually, a question that really hasn't been asked, but I've been sort of starting to ask myself about that now. Like, what did I really want to know? Because it's like when you get about a year away from a book, you begin to understand truly why you wrote it. Because most of the time, to be honest, you're just operating on a wing and a prayer, and you're thinking, please let me get through to the end of this bloody thing. But I kind of wanted to know how I was going to get through it myself, and after what had happened in the Bush years, how we as a country, or as a nation, or as an related series of nations, how would we get to a point of grace, and how would we learn to go on and to forgive certain things, and maybe stand up and recover? Because people are talking all sorts of manure about the end of history and all this sort of stuff, and it used to bother me. And so the book, I think, is a personal working out of how I felt about those days, and how maybe my children will deal with those days, and how things do recover and things do get better. I happen to think we're living in a really, really good time to be an American. I carry 2 passports now. Right. I carry my green one, my Irish one, and I carry my American one. And for a little while there, I didn't want to take the blue one out of my pocket.
Yes.
And now I gladly take the blue one out of my pocket. And maybe that's shallow of me, but it's absolutely how I felt and how I feel. And I just feel a widening of empathy, and I feel, and I see artists moving in new directions, and taking on new subjects, and imagining the life of the other more deeply, and it makes me quite proud. I see that in Irish literature too.
I wanted to ask you about that because, well, one thing is you moved here in 1994. And I'm wondering, how does your view as an immigrant bring a different perspective than, say, a writer who's a native New Yorker?
Right. I actually moved here first, believe it or not, in '86.
Okay.
Like, how many eons ago was that?
A different time. It
was different. I took a bicycle across the United States, and then I moved away and came back in '94. You're exactly right. And but your question was?
How's your view as an immigrant bring a different perspective than, say, a native New Yorker?
That's a good question, but aren't all native New Yorkers immigrants in some sort of way? You become even if you're born here, you become immigrant to a city that's changing every single day. What I love about New York is it? I mean, it is a city of the elsewhere, and sometimes a city of the anywhere, people, you meet people. I think 50% of the babies born today in New York will have a foreign-born, at least one foreign-born parent. That's extraordinary to me. So it seems like we're in this great melting pot. But the other thing is about the United States and about America and about what's happening now, and even on the level of the National Book Award, there's 3 foreign-born authors who have been nominated for the National Book Award. And I don't know another country that would be open enough to do that sort of thing. And it makes me, it gives me great hope for how we as a people change. I mean, but you do hear a lot of griping and moaning. But I took a bicycle across this country, as I told you, years and years ago. And I found it to be an incredibly, vibrant place and full of ideas. And maybe it's because I was Irish and I was on a bicycle and I wasn't going to run off with anyone's furniture,
Well, you'd mentioned about Irish in books and what's coming out of Ireland, and I'm somebody who repeatedly calls for a broadening of the definition of Irishness. And I'm wondering, is there Is there an Irish book, an Irish film, or are they all just books or films that happen to be set in Ireland or written by somebody Irish or has an Irish character?
This is a really provocative and profound question, and one that you and I both know that we could spend probably weeks discussing that. I think the essence of intelligence is this old idea that you have to be able to hold contradictory ideas in the palms of your hand at the same time. So that like a book is really just only a book, and a good book is a good book. But then we have to put certain categories on it just so we're able to negotiate it for ourselves, or even find it on the bookshelves or find it in the video store. So the next thing comes down to, well, where's it from? Because that's what we ask people when we meet them. Where are you from? And so then books become an Irish book and so on. But say I've written a book about a Slovakian gypsy poet.
Right.
Is that an Irish book or is it not? Well, part of me feels, well, it's an international book, but at its core, it has to be an Irish book because I'm an Irish-born and raised author. And I think that we embrace the outside by taking on these other stories, but really, essentially, we're sort of looking at ourselves. So I would answer both ways. I would say, there are only novels, and then, yes, indeed, there are, Irish-American novels or whatever it happens to be.
To digress, I have to say that I found Claire in your book in some ways to be more Irish than Corrigan. Does that make any sense?
That makes sense. Sense.
Well, people have to read that and think about it because I don't think it'll sort of leap out at Miro on the wall and things like that. Maybe
right.
think it was more of an Irish person.
No, that's so funny because because I wanted Corrigan to be one of the sort of original international mongrels, because he doesn't care. He doesn't talk about Ireland at all, doesn't
Never.
get sentimental about it, and, doesn't get into any of the northern stuff,
Exactly.
And he becomes a man of the place he's in.
That's the end of part 2 of the podcast. In the final part 3, Colum speaks about the book as a film, Ireland, immigration versus emigration, and what's next.